Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup. I am your humble host, D-Vase. Yes, that's talent on loan from Kolob. It is April 13th, 2025. This is episode 158 of the Mormon News Roundup. It is 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, coming to you from the crossroads of the East, Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. What's going on in Mormon land? You're going to find out. We are going to ruminate on the great and spacious beehive. But before we get started, I'd like to welcome onto my program my fabulous co-host, Kendell. Kendell, how are you? You have to remember to unmute yourself when you get back onto the screen there, Kendell.
All right. Yeah. Hey,
there you go.
Doing great. Super excited.
Great. Kendell, who are you and what are you all about? What's your 1 minute Mormon story?
Yeah, my 1 minute Mormon story is I was born and raised in Utah, did all the Mormon things. That was the air I breathed. I thought I was going to be an institute and seminary teacher. Everything I did was related to that. And then I did all the Mormon things, got married, and everything was going fine, except for I actually got married in order to get a job with the church. I couldn't be hired full time as an institute teacher as a single person. And anyway, long story short, the marriage didn't last, and that led to me questioning my faith, as it had some repercussions in my family that never had a divorce before, and caused some problems. And it reached a boiling point where I questioned some things of the church, and I found history and things that I didn't know about. I was deceived and didn't know all the things that I think I should have known before I made a lot of decisions and commitments.
Well, it's nice to have a fellow former church employee here on the Mormon News Roundup. I worked full-time or part-time for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for 24 years. So it's nice to see some solidarity there with you. Let's see what we got here. Episode 158 coming right at you. What is that? You going on a mission? What is that picture?
Yeah, that was me as a missionary. I was called to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And, at the time, I thought it was super great. I was doing the Lord's work. But, I was telling a story that I wasn't given all the details. I was kind of spreading a lie.
Yeah, I totally get it. Hey, Alan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you out there. And Lee as well. Thanks for so much for joining the program. We really appreciate you dropping by. Now, what are we going to be covering for today's episode? What is our agenda here, Kendell?
Yeah, we're going to do some more general conference, always a relevant topic, even weeks after. We're going to go especially over Elder Anderson's talk, as there was a huge controversy there. Some more temples, a little bit about Lori Vallow, and some reactions to things. And the church lawsuit, which is always an interesting thing that keeps coming up. And I don't know what that last
the church has lost a lawsuit against its own insurer, and we're going to break that down for you here on the Mormon News Roundup. Very interesting stuff. Now, here's a couple of fake reactions from General Conference, which just happened last week, but the repercussions and fallout usually take about a week or two to fully percolate through. This is the fake headline here. LDS Church announces new Word of Wisdom guidelines for soda, extra large sizes, and certain add-ins now prohibited. How would you like that kind of General Conference headline there, Kendell?
I mean, that would at least be relevant to people's health, but I kind of view the church as a business, so they wouldn't touch that big of a cow of people's likes and dislikes. They know that would offend too many people.
Yeah, that's obviously a fake headline. And here's another fake reaction of General Conference here, which I found very amusing. Let's cue this one up.
My summary of the most recent General Conference. I did not watch any of it, but from your summaries, from what I can tell, it consisted of a long line of white men making up very juvenile stories that are like, could be in a G-rated Disney movie, and then being like, see, that's what it's like.
Is that a pretty solid summary of General Conference there, Kendell? A long line of mostly white guys having made up stories and then just saying, see, that's the end.
Yeah, in fact, that was one of the things when my shelf broke, I realized they're presenting a reality that is far too simplistic, far too black and white. And it seems innocuous on the surface, but when you really see the effects that simplification has on your worldview, I think it's really damaging. So I think that's actually a pretty true summary.
Yeah, very good. Now, the Exponent 2, one of my favorite magazines out there, has a General Conference photo recap, which I found to be very interesting. First of all, we have President Holland there in the wheelchair giving the thumbs up, and there are 7 important women in this photo. Let's only identify the man wheeling past in the foreground and what he's doing. So these are all, we have apostles' wives, we have general officers, big time leaders in the church, but only Elder Holland is the one who's going to get the thumbs up. That is very typical, as from what I've seen. Let's look at a couple of other photos from the Exponent. They always have a lot of good things church leadership is not just a good old boys club. But look at all these photos, Kendall. It's all men. These are from the church's official website. Look at all the men here, Kendall.
Yeah, it's almost as if like they give lip service to equality and venerating women, but their actions seem to me to be a little different. That's so confusing.
Yeah, look, there's women up front too, but women don't speak at the pulpit much. But the wives of men who do get a talk to each other near the pulpit, and we'll take the photo. So they will share a picture of the women talking to each other, but not addressing the congregation. Again, this is from the church's website. Kristen Oakes and Harriet Uchtdorf during the meeting, they will talk to each other, but there's no pictures generally of women addressing everyone else. And here's another photo of Elder Holland waving with some colorful flower arrangements. No, wait, human women in the background. So it's the men who are always out front and the women are in the shadows. I seem to have noticed a pattern with that, Kendall.
Yeah, well, if we listen to Jared Halverson, they've always been more in the background, more in the pews, never on the pulpit. At least we have some progress.
And here's a couple. What intermediate hymn dance break? Everybody raise the roof, jazz hands. It's fun. A couple of light takes on General Conference. There are plenty of girls and women in the. They will take a lot of pictures of women in the audience, but they will not generally take a picture of women up on the stand. That just doesn't happen. Look at this. Definitely not at the pulpit. That's what Jared Halverson had a problem with 2 weeks ago when he said that women are valued in the church, but just not over the pulpit. And as the exponent is pointing out, that seems to be the reality of what we're seeing in General Conference, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yeah. It's the ratio is totally off.
Look, and only 3 women speakers all weekend. 3 out of over about 10 hours of sermons. We only had 3 women speakers who usually speak for about 8 minutes each or so. Apostles get 15, women, I believe, get 8. So in approximately 10 hours of instruction, we got 24 minutes of women and the rest were basically men. That's not at all surprising, to be honest with you. Look at this. They put all 9 women leaders together in a colorful row in the middle of a sea of men. Here's those women leaders with the primary, the general, the Relief Society presidency, Young Women's presidency, but they are surrounded by a sea of men. Does this make it look like there's more of them than they actually are? How do you like this photo, Kendall?
Oh, I have been absolutely impressed by the church marketing and PR department. They make representation seem a lot bigger than it is. I'm sure they have people on it to make it seem like it's way more representative than it actually is.
Yeah, Abby does a great job over there at the Expo. Absolutely fantastic job. Now, probably the most controversial talk here was the one that was given by Elder Anderson in General Conference. Now, just by way of note, I live stream General Conference on YouTube. Unfortunately, they took them all down. But if you go onto my Facebook page or onto my Instagram page, those General Conference live streams are still there. But this is probably the most controversial talk where Elder Anderson says, adopting your unfaithful husband's baby with another woman? And then he says, this is wonderful in some way. This is really the one that's causing the most controversy. Let's check this out.
Temple, and after having 3 wonderful children, the man was unfaithful to his wife and his sacred covenants. A single woman became pregnant and wanted an abortion. The husband's saintly wife pleaded with the woman to have the baby and promised that she would raise the child once he was born with her own children. The single woman thoughtfully agreed not to end the pregnancy. It had now been 10 years. The humble sister sitting in front of me loved the boy as her own. How could this noble woman of God take a child as her own, who could be a daily reminder of the unfaithfulness of her husband? How? Because she found strength through Jesus Christ, and she believed in the sacredness of life, the holiness of life.
Okay, that's pretty much the sum up there, Kendall. What's your first take? We're going to get a couple of reactions here on Elder Anderson's controversial talk. He seems to be praising the idea that a woman should adopt the child of a baby that her husband was unfaithful and fathered with another woman.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. And not only is he saying that, he's implying one of the things I hugely struggled with and only recognized after distancing myself from the church is scrupulosity and having such a high standard that I had constant pressure to measure up to. And this is what perpetuates that is He's telling a story that is so crazy, asking this woman to do something, and it implies like, oh, if I'm going to be a good person, I have to self-sacrifice to that extent too. That's what the Lord requires.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Now, even KSL covered the controversy that goes along with this. Apostle warns against, quote, elective abortion during the first day of General Conference. This is from the church's own media outlet here, KSL, which is owned by the church itself. But even they covered this controversial talk, which is probably one of the worst talks, I would say, of the entire session, and the one that really went viral. Let's check it out.
Saints across the world are taking part in General Conference, a two-day gathering that brings tens of thousands of people to downtown Salt Lake City. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dan Rascone.
And I'm Garda Mejia. Well, this afternoon, those attending conference heard from one of the apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who spoke out against abortion.
The diminishing love for unborn children worldwide is a grave concern. God cherishes life. It is his work and his glory to bring immortality and eternal life to his children. As disciples of Jesus Christ, we cherish life.
That was Elder Neil L. Anderson. He added that the only exceptions to the church's stance on abortion are when the mother's life is in danger, when the pregnancy is a result of rape or incest, or when a doctor determines that the fetus won't survive at birth. Nearly 3 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, which ended federal protections for abortion.
Meanwhile, the third session of General Conference gets underway in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and head on over to Daniel Woodruff. He's live outside right now, the conference center, with the latest on what's been a very busy day for church leaders and members. Daniel.
Yeah, Dan, certainly a lot of anticipation leading up to General Conference today, and there's a lot of anticipation for what's to come as the conference continues tonight and tomorrow. General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints got underway with a heartfelt message from one of the faith's top...
Oh, okay. I think we pretty much got the message there for the most part there. Elder Anderson talked about the evils of, or the so-called evils of elective abortion. What are your thoughts on his messaging?
Well, I'm actually writing a book about faith crises, and I define cults in a certain way in the book. And one of the part of the definition is any organization that disrupts healthy identity development and decision processing. And when you give such a black and white standard, I don't think it gives people the nuance and the tools they need to make a decision. There's lots of things that go into that decision. And when he says it's so black and white, I think he's doing a huge disservice to his congregation.
And as far as I know, he has no particular expertise in women's reproductive health. He's not a doctor. He doesn't have any significant experience or background in this whatsoever. I don't know why it is that we're supposed to be taking what he says about abortion seriously. He doesn't have the credentials in my mind to talk about it. Also, the fact that he's a man as well does not help. Now, a couple of reactions that I saw online from this is this is from one of my favorite accounts out there on Facebook. He said he just gave an example of a woman whose husband cheated on her and his side chick got pregnant, and the quote unquote saintly wife told his side chick not to get an abortion. My heart is racing right now. Get this man off of the stage. This has nothing to do with Jesus Christ or his church. Guys, Anderson's talk is off to an alarming start, talking about an unchaste young woman. This is a very creepy thing to talk about as an old man. This is an anti-choice talk. This is a right way to be talk. It always seems to be that women are supposed to be the ones who sacrifice, and men are never seem to be held very much accountable in these talks. It's always a woman's responsibility somehow to, I don't know, raise somebody else's kids. That seems like a pretty harmful message in my mind.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and what culture? It's great to see you out there in the live chat, and Lee as well. Great to have you on board. And Big Chris, you said credentials. He's a special witness of Jesus Christ. Actually, he's only a special witness of the name of Jesus. So I just want to give a clarification out there. And if you could just hit that like and subscribe button out there, I would greatly appreciate that. A couple of other reactions here on Elder Anderson's talk here from Jessica Frankel, who has a great Facebook page out there. She says, I'm giving myself a permission to be quick about this one. I'm trying not to get triggered again. We've always, as Elder Anderson said, we've always been clear on abortion unless the case of rape or incest or life-threatening medical issues, you're not allowed. It's not really your choice. because all spirit children have to come to earth and receive a body. We don't know the exact moment the spirit enters a fetus, but it doesn't really matter because we already existed in the pre-existence with a divine identity intact. He seems to be saying that there can be no exceptions unless the ones that the church prescribes. Any last thoughts here on the Elder Anderson talk here?
Again, I just have to emphasize that if there's some system or organization or authority that is telling you what to do with your personal life, I think you should sincerely question that authority. Any vertical morality system has absolute blind spots, and this is one of them.
Right. And as Lee said, my wife says this story also tries to tie his wife to her cheating hubby even more. I do appreciate that. Thanks for dropping by, Lee. Now, the other biggest, I think this general conference really boils down to two things. Number one is Elder Anderson's talk, and number two is President Nelson's talk here. He called on his followers to be peacemakers, but the problem is that, Fairview, Texas would like to have a word with you, President Nelson, about being a pacemaker when you threaten lawsuits to build a temple that is massively bigger than the zoning rules allow, and even more than any precedent exception. Without any precedent, you're not being a peacemaker. You sought contention. You need to practice what you preach. Let's just cue that up here.
Covenant followers of Jesus Christ to be peacemakers. I repeat what I said then. Anger never persuades. Hostility builds no one. Contention never leads to inspired solutions. True charity towards all men is the hallmark of peacemakers. It is imperative that we have charity in our discourse, both public and private. I thank those of you who took my previous counsel to heart, but we can still do better.
Yeah, now we're going to get to his temples here in a minute. So he was reiterating his famous peacemaker talk that he had when he, what was that in? I want to say it was in 2022, which some people say is his most famous talk. And he's doubling down on that, saying that we need to be peacemakers in our public discourse. How do you feel about President Nelson's address here?
Yeah, I want to come up with a special concept or term because a lot of religions say a lot of things, but then their actions, it's like they forgot what they said last week. And the closest I've come is this word humility. Something is right by virtue of the fact that I, as the leader, did it. So they can carve out exceptions for what they do, but everyone else has to have 100% compliance. But they know when they're still righteous and not doing the thing they said last week.
See, that's the thing. You're going to call to be a peacemaker, and then you're going to threaten to sue all these little towns over your temples. Something seems to be amiss with that particular messaging. And now here is those 15 temples that he did announce here from everywhere from Mexico, Peru, Uganda, Brazil, Portugal, Nigeria, the Philippines, Caledonia, Australia, Idaho, Arizona, South Dakota, South Carolina, Norfolk, Virginia, and Spanish Fork, Utah. Any of those jump out at you, Kendall, as particularly interesting or unexpected?
Yeah, why do we need so many where there's already so many?
That's a good point. We are going to be getting into that. Yes, a couple of these are very close to other temples, including the Spanish Fork, Utah temple, and including the Caldwell, Idaho temple, are quite close to other temples. Let's hear him announce those 15 temples in general here.
We do not know the day or the hour of his coming, but I do know that the Lord is prompting me to urge us to get ready for that great and dreadful day.
Latter-day Saints hear a message from their president and prophet who announced 15 new temples will be built, including one right here in Utah. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dan Roscoe.
And I'm Ashley Moser. President Russell M. Nelson made that announcement during the final session of General Conference just a little bit ago. Let's go now to news specialist Daniel Woodruff, who's right outside the conference center, not too far from us, with the very latest. Daniel?
Yeah, Ashley and Dan, that's the big news coming out of General Conference this afternoon. 15 new temples, including one that's going to be built in southern Utah County. Let's go to that full list of temples announced by President Russell M. Nelson. They are Reynosa, Mexico, Chorrillos, Peru, Rivera, Uruguay, Campo Grande, Brazil, Porto, Portugal, Uyo, Nigeria, San Jose del Monte, Philippines, Noumea, New Caledonia, Liverpool, Australia, Caldwell, Idaho, Flagstaff, Arizona, Rapid City, South Dakota, Greenville, South Carolina, Norfolk, Virginia, and Spanish Fork, Utah. President Nelson, who is 100 years old, was in person at the final session today of General Conference. His remarks and the announcement of the new temples were delivered in a pre-recorded message to conference attendees. Now, with today's news, President Nelson himself has now personally announced 200 new temples since he became president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints back in 2018.
Regular worship in the house of the Lord increases our capacity for both virtue and charity. Thus, time in the temple increases our confidence before the Lord. Increased time in the temple will help us prepare for the second coming of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Now, with these new temples announced today, that means the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints now has 382 temples that are either in operation, under construction, or that have been announced like those today. We will have much more tonight and reaction to news of these new temples coming up on KSL 5 News at 10. Back to
Yeah, I think we pretty much got the gist of it, Kendall. So President Nelson is now responsible for more than half of the total church temples. It's a lot of temples, announcing pretty much 15 every single general conference. You can set your watch by it. How do you feel about his announcement?
Yeah, honestly, it's getting to the point where the church has become kind of, in my mind, in some ways, a self-parody. I mean, the vision of the tree of life talks about the building, that's great and spacious. 2 Nephi 28 says here that, evil organizations rob the poor because of their many fine sanctuaries, persecute the meek and poor in heart because of their pride. I'm having a hard time seeing how the church isn't falling into going against their own teachings.
Yeah, let's check out the what Rebecca Biblioteca said about that. You have the Lehigh Temple and also a Spanish Fork Temple. Both of those are in Utah County, in which there's already a number of temples in Utah County to begin with. There's already the Payson Temple. There's 2 Provo temples. There's a Linden Temple. There's an American Fork Temple. There's a Saratoga Springs Temple. I think I might be forgetting one more. Now we're announcing another temple. There's going to be 7, I believe, temples, or maybe even 8 in Utah County, which is my old neck of the woods here. But this is the issue here, as Rebecca points out. The Lehigh, Utah West Stake, which is where this temple is going, is shrinking. And yet they're saying that this is a huge, huge temple. 85,000 square feet is basically triple the size of, the average temple, which is, the average temple is usually around 30,000 square feet. So the boundaries of all of these wards have been realigned. They went down from 11 to 9. They discontinued a couple of wards. They shrunk everything down. And yet somehow we need to have another temple, make it 8 in Utah County. This doesn't seem to make sense because, Kendall, when I was growing up, at least in the President Hinckley area, temples were generally put into places in which the church was growing. Now they're put into places where the temples are really, really close by and the church is shrinking. It doesn't seem to make sense.
Well, Deeves, you got to look at it more like a business. If you want people to have a sense of pride in the organization and the appearance of growth, you got to do something. What else are the church has as far as turning to options? This is a good option in their mind.
It definitely is now. And this is probably the other temple that kind of caught my eye here, Kendall, is the church has now planned, not only did they plan 2 temples in Utah County, Spanish Fork Temple is very close to Payson and also very close to the South Provo Temple. Now they're planning a 3rd temple. They're going to have 3 temples in Boise. Well, let me just play this for you. This is I think this has an ad that goes along with this. This is from the Ohio Statement here. Active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints regularly attend churches, but many of them are going to be attending temples. And this is the Meridian Temple, which opened in 2017. But now we're going to have a 3rd temple here that is going to be put into the Idaho area. It's a, sorry about this ad here, but let's check this out. Oh, sorry about the ad.
Sitting in my head.
Get this free pore cleansing brush with your first order. Go to proactive.com now.
And this is that angel Moroni that's getting put atop of the new Meridian LDS Temple. And they claim that it's just not because of growth. They claim that there's some kind of an ulterior motive that goes behind this.
Angel Moroni
Sorry, let me see this. Here we go. I got it. The volume might be a little low on this one.
Today marks a significant milestone in the construction of the Meridian, Idaho Temple. With the placement of the Angel Moroni, that signifies really that a majority of the, if not all, of the exterior construction is now complete. So So that's a significant milestone. The edifice that you see now is largely complete on the exterior, and now they can focus on the interior and the landscaping that needs to take place on site. There are a couple of
So that Meridian Temple is already just about ready to go, but then they've announced yet another one that's if we back this up here, the name of the other one that they announced here for that area was the Caldwell, Idaho Temple, which is also right near Boise. All three of these, Caldwell, Meridian, and Boise, they're all very, very close by. All of these temples are extremely close by. It's making people really wonder what is the rationale behind all of these temples. And I think it's kind of like exactly what you said, Kendall, that it's really giving the attribute of, the appearance of growth without actually, having any growth. As Katie Ash, welcome to the program, said, Lehi hasn't broken ground yet. Yes, those were just announced. That's true. And Katie Ash said you contributed to that shrinkage. I can definitely appreciate that. Jen, welcome to the program. The construction of grand buildings and infrastructure projects has often served as a tool for leaders to project power, legitimize their authority, and create a legacy. Do you agree with that sentiment there, Kendall?
I don't know. I think that's part of it, but I think a larger part is once they got found out about all the money they weren't spending, they had to spend it somehow. And so they can count these as like, oh, this is for the good of the community. This is a charitable donation. And oh, by the way, we also get the increased value of the land and greater visibility and all these other things to promote ourselves.
Yeah, Gene, welcome to the program. Latter Daily Digest. 12 gallons of gas saved each year due to closer temples in Utah. You do save a little bit of gas, but most of these temples really run about $1,000 per square foot. So we would expect that Lehi Temple to be about a $80 million building. I mean, this is an extraordinarily expensive endeavor here. Saving a couple of gallons of gas definitely doesn't make up for the fact that these temples appear to be a profound waste in my mind. And as Lee said, with all of my temple announcements and hardball building tactics, no one will remember Hinckley. Well, he's definitely trying to one-up Hinckley in my mind with all of these temples. Now, a couple last temple reactions here, again from Rebecca Biblioteca. Look at what she posted here. This is very interesting, Kendall. When you least expect it, for heaven's sakes, don't give any towns or communities a heads up on what's coming in their direction. This is such a blessing to a town that we don't want them to know the blessing is headed their way. So this is an announcement from this Greenville, South Carolina stake that says, we've been instructed by the church communications department, do not get ahead of the prophet. Refrain from making announcements verbally or online that go beyond what we have been given. We want to avoid unnecessary attacks or opposition. Why do you think stake leaders are saying, hey, don't talk to your friends about this temple stuff? I thought we were supposed to be spreading the good word of God here.
Absolutely. We just saw, not 10 minutes ago that contention never leads to inspired solutions. So the only option members have is to, do what we say, not what we told you to do a week ago. And it's a lot of cognitive dissonance to not be spreading the gospel, but they have ulterior motives, I think.
Well, and that's the amazing thing here is we've seen that a lot of communities these days don't want to have a lot of these giant temples that are generally forced down their throats, a lot of whom do not want to have it in their particular locale. And so the stake is saying, don't spread the word too much about these because we don't want people to have opposition to these temples in advance of when they're actually announced. The church generally likes to keep these temple announcements close to the vest, as secret as it possibly can, even though sometimes it gets leaked out. But I think that these temples would be much better received if the church were to work with these particular communities before announcing the temples and their locations, rather than just announcing them by fiat and then trying to work out the details later. Any last thoughts on the total temples or the entire general conference here in general?
I really want to see their books. I want to see how much they're spending and what all the prices are. When are they going to be more transparent?
And that's a very good question. Now, the Widow's Mite report definitely gives us a crack behind the pale. And some of these temples, the cost that the subcontractors, when they make these temples, sometimes they release how much they charge the church. So we have approximately 8 or 10 temples that we know how much they cost. And the total price tag probably for all of the temples that the church currently has is probably just short of $15 billion. So that's a lot of money to spend on giant Masonic esoteric castles. There's absolutely no doubt about that. For those of you out in the live chat, a cult said Scientology playbook always build buildings. Now, I definitely get you. Moondrop, thanks for coming to the program. Keep up the brilliant observation and work. Love it. Nothing but love to you and yours always. That is very kind of you. I do appreciate that. Always buy property. That seems to be the church's motto. I do appreciate that. Now, switching gear. Well, actually, I do have one last. I have two last general conference takes. First from Nemo here, where he's talking about Mormon Kremlinology. Before you go rushing to the comments to talk about the straining of the gnats, I've discussed previously how Kremlinology is incredibly speculative. Nemo is going to give a kind of a conspiracy theory about General Conference. I forgot that I had this queued up here. Let's see if you agree with his conspiracies.
A viewer pointed out to me that as the apostles were all shaking hands with Church President Russell M. Nelson, Dale G. Renland shook Dallin H. Oaks' hand before President Nelson's. So what, I hear you say? Well, given that the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 are highly hierarchical, to the point where I've heard things are handed out in meetings in order of seniority, I do think it's significant that Renland didn't shake Nelson's outstretched hand. But what exactly might it signify? An acknowledgement that Oaks is really in charge? Some sort of personal beef between Renland and Nelson? Or something else entirely? Let me know what you think in the comments.
Okay, what do you make of this one? He kind of did go right past President Nelson, and that's kind of a faux pas. What do you think about this? Look at that. He just goes right past him, and then he comes back. What's the deal with that, Kendall? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not one to be partial to conspiracy theories, but I gotta say that was suspicious. And didn't President Oaks give the big training, worldwide training about, hey, we need to excommunicate more people when President Nelson was in poor health? I mean, he kind of has a history of taking power when the opportunity is given to him.
Well, he calls it Kremlinology. It's kind of a kabuki theater. I don't know if there's that much to that, but it is kind of weird. People look at trying to find the read the tea leaves of General Conference, and it can definitely be a hard thing to do. Here's one more conspiracy theory out there that Rebecca Biblioteca brought to my attention here. And she said, look at these two gentlemen right here that are on the front row on the right-hand side, and see what they do. It's a little weird. Give me your thoughts on this one, Kendall. This is another weird one from General Conference. What? That's it. People making too much of that? That is a little bit weird. What do you think, Kendall?
The video on that one.
Do you see that with these two guys in the right front? They're giving like the power salute there, you know? What do you think about
the
that?
power.
Yeah, what do you think about this power salute?
I think there's nothing there with that. I think they're just giving a gesture of like, hey, good to see you. I can't say hi to you, so I'll give you a fist bump in the air instead. That's how I take it.
Okay, well, as long as they don't do an Elon salute, I guess that's okay. I mean, that'd probably be going too far now. Now, Ron Jorgensen, they released a statistical report here, and this is very interesting, the statistics here. This is Ron's summary. We'll cover a couple of slides about that. Now that all the new stats are out, I found these updated charts on where congregation growth is happening. It's no surprise that Africa is leading the charge still, and Europe continues to wither on the vine. North America, which includes Mexico, is utterly stagnant, and the Philippines continues to save Asia. Australia and New Zealand are shrinking considerably. Also, the church added 254 net new members this year, but the church grew by only 186 congregations, meaning that it took 1,365 new members for every congregation. That's a little surprising, Kendall, to grow by that many members, 250,000 members growing, but you only added 186 wards. Why? What's the deal? Give me an overview. What do you take away from those general snapshot of the church statistics?
I mean, I know we all believe that the church is 100% transparent about their membership numbers and their activity rates, but maybe, just maybe, a lot of those baptisms never get to be active members. I don't know, just a theory.
That's probably very wise. Here is the net congregation growth by year here with, you can see South America, Oceania, North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. And you can see that this chart gets considerably as you go from left to right. It used to be North America, lots of green in the 1980s, all these rich North Americans. All of a sudden that is dying, and instead it's being replaced by blue Africans. And you can see in the 2000 range-ish, from about 1990 to 2000, it's all South America. So it used to, in 1980 to about 2000, it's North America. Then South America picks up, and now Africa picks up. Why do you suppose that this particular, why does it look this way? What's the big takeaway? Why is there different areas that are growing faster in different times? What do you think?
Yeah, I actually did my undergrad thesis on how differentiation and enlightenment follows a trajectory of how rich a country is over time. And so maybe we've just, as you know, these higher per capita nations are getting disillusioned with religion. They have to find growth somewhere. And so when you're poor, you need hope, you need meaning. That's where the growth is. At least that's how I view it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest factors that impacts a person's religiosity, modernization, and also secularization. And as we saw, America got more secularized, more modernized, less people in religion. Same with South America. And one of the least industrialized, least modern places in the world is the global South, including, in particular, Africa. So that's why the church is doing relatively well there. Although we need to say that for a certainty here, that if you compare the church to other restorationist religions like Seventh-day Adventists or Jehovah's Witnesses, the church is doing much worse there on total converts. So it's not like this is some massive win for Mormonism. These other religions are sending less missionaries and getting more converts. So Mormonism is not doing well in any particular area in the world today. Now, here is the net congregation growth. Again, you can see in Africa, it's a significant amount of growth here. In Asia, it is really probably staying about the same here. You can tell in South America, again, not much happening there. North America, it is definitely stagnant. And you can see in Europe, it continues to get hollowed out here. And same with Oceania. It's pretty much on the decline. A couple of other net congregation growth. I think that's pretty much the slide there. I think we pretty much got it. Ron has a pretty good job there. Now, a couple of other things that caught my eye is it is Easter time, and the church has these pageants that they occasionally do here. They've canceled a lot of the pageants over the years. They used to do the Hill Cumorah and Palmyra. They used to do in Manti. There used to be a pageant. There used to be a pageant at the Clarkston. My understanding is that almost all of the pageants that the church has done have gone away. And I believe, someone can correct me in the live chat, that this Mesa, Arizona one is one of the last pageants. Why has the church canceled so many pageants? And why is the Mesa, Arizona pageant still going when others are not?
Yeah, I've actually talked to several people about this, and the members are heartbroken. This was a tradition in each of their respective areas. They looked forward to do it. They felt they were contributing to the positive perception of the church. But I do have to say, again, just going off the crazy theory that maybe, just maybe, the church is more a business than a church, I can just see some consultant going through their, line item sheet and saying, you could cut this with minimal impact. You could cut this with minimal impact, and it saves your bottom line. And everyone's just like, oh, great. Yeah, we like to hear that.
I don't know about that, because the church has more money than God and the devil put together. So I don't know if it's about line items, but I just think in my mind that a lot of the church pageants, especially the Palmyra pageant, well, the church has gone away from the narrative that the Hill Cumorah is the Hill Cumorah in the Book of Mormon anyway. So that's out. The Manti pageant, it was considered culturally insensitive. They had, I've been to the Manti pageant myself. They had the dark-skinned Lamanites and the white and delightsome Nephites. It's absolute cringe. If you take a look even at the Clarkston pageant, Martin Harris was an incredibly fickle person. He's not exactly a great statesman for Mormonism. The only pageant that they kept around is this bland Easter Jesus one, whereas all of the rest of them seem to have gone away. When I grew up in the church, we had the road shows. We had the ward basketball. We even had the softball. We had the regional tournaments. We had a lot more vibrant of a program than what they have today. And the only thing left of all of that really is this one Easter pageant. In some ways, I'm kind of sad about that.
Yeah, I remember going to several pageants growing up. They were a huge part of the culture. Everyone enjoyed them. So it is kind of sad to see them go. But at the same time, they were really cringe. I'm glad at least someone cares about cultural sensitivity. But they do have so much money. Why not replace it with something even more inspiring and positive? I think they can do it.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, appreciate what you're saying here, Lee. Jesus is in it. That's still a Mormon thing. And Vocalist, thanks for joining in. I don't think any words P. Nelson said was live during conference. I believe that almost everything that he said was pre-taped. And he, I believe, only showed up for one session, if I am not mistaken here. Now, this is that time of the year here where Easter is happening. And Rebecca Biblioteca over there says that the Easter hype is off the charts. Let's see if she's right about that.
I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that LDS Easter is here and it's off the charts. The hype is bigger than ever this year. Now, when I was growing up in the LDS church, we didn't do this kind of thing for Easter. In fact, these practices that we're seeing now in the LDS church were considered, I don't know, rooted in the apostasy. We absolutely did not do them. Even in the church's handbook right now, it says that Easter is not to be celebrated with activities for Holy Week, Good Friday, Palm Sunday. Yet I'm sure most of you have noticed so many invitations to concerts and events surrounding the Holy Week activities. Here's one that I thought was really interesting. It says bounce houses and a Christ-centered program. There you have it. I think that kind of sums up LDS Easter. Christ-centered bounce houses.
Now, I do appreciate that. See, when I was growing up here, Kendall, we would never have a multi-denominational Easter celebration with Brown's houses and then a message about Jesus. Is the church trying to rebrand about this this Easter stuff, or what do you think's going on?
Yeah, I was actually talking to Rebecca this morning about this, and she thinks, the church is trying to be more mainstream, trying to not lose as many of the rising generation. They got to make it more fun, more interactive, have more excuses to have activities, or they're going to lose people. They have to appeal to a wider audience, was her theory. I think she's right.
Well, the funny thing about it is that the church can't quite get its messaging straight for this Easter stuff, because for so long, Easter was kind of not entirely celebrated that much. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. And this is what somebody posted here on Facebook here, which I find to be very remarkable. If you look at the one on the left here, Kendall, look at this. Kirsty Wright Salter says, make it make sense. The first photo on the left here, the left column, is from LDS.org. On the church's official webpage, on the topic section under Easter. The second picture, so here's the one. This is from LDS.org. Look at what it says. Latter-day Saints conduct Easter Sunday services, but do not follow the religious observances of Ash Wednesday, Lent, or Holy Week. Okay, that's what I'm used to. That's what I'm used to. But look at on the right. This is, again, is sent from the church itself, churchofjesuschrist.org. We have an event schedule here where the second picture is from an invite from the church sent via email for a Palm Sunday celebration. They can't even get their own beliefs straight. Look what it says. Information about the event. Palm Sunday marks the beginning of Holy Week. Come celebrate the joy of praising the Lord on Palm Sunday. The concert will be live streamed. So on the left, it says we don't really do the Easter thing. And then from the same church on the right, it says, hey, let's do the Easter thing. Is this not a blatant contradiction?
Oh, I see exactly where the church is coming from. They use this playbook all the time. It's the same as when the church said, oh, I don't know where missionaries got this idea to challenge people to baptize after the first lesson. They're literally speaking out of both sides of their mouth and deny it when convenient. That's how I see it.
Well, that was an Elder Ballard special. I honestly think he just had an incredibly poor memory. I'll just be as charitable as I can about him. But I do have a video on this channel, by the way, the top 10 fails of M. Russell Ballard, which I think is a good watch. But yes, the Easter messaging is a little bit bizarre. Now, changing gears here, I got a couple of articles that hit this week from the church in real estate. As we know, the church is the number 2 holder of real estate in the United States by total amount of acres, and probably number 1 in total valuation, having a portfolio of somewhere around 105, maybe $115 billion. And look at what they picked up here, Kendall. Mormon Church, and also buys this big plot out there in Kentucky. An investment arm of the church based Mormon Church, commonly known as LDS, has made another major agricultural property play, this time near Forbes, Kentucky, spreading 6,000 acres. And it's cost the church about $40 million. This is just one of many purchases that the church has made all the time here. $40 million. That's absolutely incredible. And not to be outdone, the church has also broadened its horizons with another farm deal, this time in, I believe, what is this, Australia farmland. It's expanding its footprint in Australia with another huge purchase of around $40 million. Both of them are similar purchases here. And the church just bought a Queensland, Australia, big conglomeration of farms for $300 million. The church is spending money left, right, and center on these farms. It's absolutely insane. This is one reason, Kendall, that a lot of people think the church is more of a corporation that dabbles in religion rather than a religion that dabbles in business. How do you feel about all these big time farm purchases? $100 million just this week alone.
Yeah, one of the things that surprises me most is, number one, most members have no idea about things like this. And number two, when I bring it up, especially in relation to the larger discussion of wealth, it doesn't faze them at all. They just justify it saying like, oh, it's good that they're investing money and making more money on the money they've already given. Like, that's just wise stewardship. Don't you know the parable of the talents? So there's lots of ways you can justify it and look at it. But I'm personally disturbed finding the real extent of the church's wealth, that they don't do more to change the world for the positive, to solve poverty. I think this is a moral issue.
Well, I will just say one thing about the church solving poverty. If you, again, I go back to the Widow's Mite report, they have a whole section on the church and whether it could solve global poverty. And according to the Widow's Mite report, it can't do it on its own, but it could certainly make more significant strides towards solving the problem. I'll just put it that way, if I can just take slight issue with the way that you phrase it, which I'm a contrarian, so I take slight issue with everything. So don't be offended. Now, I am offended, however, by this particular thing that hit here. Listen to this. Grandson of famous Mormon theologian Bruce R. McConkie, who passed away in 1985, one of the most important Mormon apostles ever, who was not a member of the First Presidency. I think he's probably the most important Mormon apostle who was not a member of the First Presidency. I'm just going to go out there and say that. And a former Colorado prosecutor, and he's a former stake president. Listen to this. I could not believe this. Gets no jail time in a CSA case. The judge still has to review. Former Colorado prosecutor admits to attempted CSA in plea agreement papers, gets no jail time for attempting a CSA. That is disappointing. People are speculating here that there was some kind of a Mormon connection here. Colorado is a very Mormon state. And it seems like a lot of times when these Latter-day Saint, particularly men, get busted trying to either solicit minors or engaging in actual CSA, that somehow they seem to get either light sentences or, in this case, no jail time at all. How do you feel about Bruce R. McConkie's grandson getting off, basically?
I mean, I wish I didn't feel this way, but having had a limited experience in the court system, it really does matter. Your connections, who you know, and all these ways that soft influence can add up to a lot of difference in the sentencing and how these court cases turn out. I really wonder what was going on behind the scenes. I think that's very possible.
Yeah, it absolutely is. If you go to floodlit.org, you can follow these more particularly former stake president, former bishop, and deputy attorney in Colorado. See, and he's the paternal grandson of former apostle McConkie, arrested in 2023, charged with felony SA on a child by somebody in a position of trust. He proposed a plea deal to avoid prison time. It looks like it's got to be reviewed by a judge here, but it looks like he is going to be getting off with no jail time here. And that's a very unfortunate development. I would like to see more justice served on these type of individuals. And I think that especially since he was in a position of trust, he was a former prosecutor. This isn't somebody who didn't know the consequences of their actions, especially when you're in that position of trust. I think that a stronger message could be sent in these particular cases. And it's unfortunate that, I don't know if there was a Mormon connection to it or not, but it doesn't really matter. I would have liked to see a better outcome on this, for at least for the survivors of this particular case and for the people who are impacted. I mean, when you're trying to solicit that type of thing, we need to send a strong message to those people. And this isn't the only SA case this week here that hit the news as well. Over there, Megan at Generally Unquotable, the church has actually loses a civil suit when it was suing its own insurer. So the church has a child sex abuse insurance. It sued its own insurer and it lost. This is a big case as well. Let's watch this.
We've got some breaking news in Mormonism. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has lost a civil suit against insurance companies over settlement payments it made to 6 West Virginia families in 2018 regarding allegations that Mormon officials hid child SA allegations from authorities and failed to provide proper support to victims. Last month, Floodlit broke the story that the Mormon Church spent $32 million to settle and over $27 million to defend a 2013 lawsuit alleging it covered up child SA in West Virginia. Floodlit also published a detailed timeline showing how the Mormon Church sued 2 of its insurance companies, hoping to recover around $90 million, saying they refused to reimburse its costs in the West Virginia suit.
Right. So when the church has let me just jump in there for a minute. When the church loses a CSA case, it has insurers that are going to pay out the victims. Okay. The church doesn't reach into its own pockets. Well, the church's insurer said, we're not going to pay these particular cases in West Virginia. So the church sued its insurer. Is there any thoughts that you have so far before we cue the rest of it up?
I mean, the thing that comes to mind is the scripture that said, you know, it would be better that a millstone were hung around their neck and cast into the sea than we offend these little ones. I sure wish there was an organization that took it as seriously as a certain figure in the New Testament took it.
Well, we have President Nelson over and over again saying that this has no place in the church, and yet it still continues to happen. And the appropriate safeguarding steps have not been taken as a whole in the church. Let's continue from generally unquotable over there at Megan.
Fox 13 Salt Lake City reported today on the church's loss in the Utah District Court. Floodlit has purchased a copy of the court's 42-page decision. It is available for free on their website.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in here. As Gene said, this is your tithing dollars at work. You want to know what tithing is being used for? Well, it's being used to pay for this insurance. That's what part of your tithing is going to help cover up this CSA, which is highly disturbing. I got a minute left of this.
Conclusion reads in part, based on the umbrella policy's language, the underlying facts and relevant case law, the court predicts that the Utah Supreme Court would hold that multiple occurrences arose from the underlying claims against the church. Once the church had knowledge that Mr. Jensen posed a risk of abuse to church members, the church had a duty to its members to prevent the abuse.
Right. So my understanding of this is that the insurer is saying, hey, the church had a responsibility here to protect its own parishioners, and it didn't take those steps. Therefore, we're not going to pay this out. I mean, listen, in every religion, in every organization, in every school, you will occasionally have, I hate to say it for lack of a better term, a couple of bad apples. But this isn't the case here. The insurer is saying the church did not take the reasonable safeguarding, did not take the steps to prevent continued abuse from happening. Therefore, we're not going to pay these out. Well, the church sued its insurer saying, no, you need to pay these out. And the church lost. What does that tell you about how the church values CSA?
I mean, clearly they put their money where their mouth is and they want to save their money. I mean, to argue in court these things, like I can't imagine the words escaping their mouths of the shame of making these kind of arguments. Like, of course, if they didn't do all they should, then they are responsible. The church is at fault here and they need to follow their own teachings and repent and make restitution. That's gospel 101.
Yeah, as Katie Ash said, imagine having so many SA cases that you actually need insurance. That is absolutely crazy. And as Lee said, most of our tithing will eventually go to defend CSA or settle in the future. That is could be a sad reality. And Latter Daily Digest, like if a car insurance declined payment of a stolen radio because the owner didn't lock the doors. Let's finish up here with see how Megan finishes this up for us.
The church had multiple opportunities to act and failed to do so. Accordingly, there was a distinct occurrence under the policies each time Mr. Jensen hurt a child or pair of siblings, and because the church did not exhaust its retained limit for any of these occurrences, the insurers had no duty to indemnify the church for any settlement payments. You can read more at floodlit.org.
I'm definitely not an expert in these particular cases, but I wonder what's that going to mean for the future of church and CSA. I can't say, but that is definitely a disturbing case here. Let me see if I can fix my audio here.
Yeah, now, there was a recent video with Colby Reddish going over all the ways the church system systematically fails to protect kids and their parishioners. So this is not surprising to me at all.
No, absolutely not. Now, another big article out there is Lori Vallow. She is being put on trial here for the murder of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. There's a couple of great Mormon-related people that are covering this. I would recommend that anybody who really wants to cover this in depth would go to Megan Connor of the Third Verse. She has a great YouTube channel. But opening statements here, Lori Vallow is representing herself. Let's hear what's going on with the Doomsday Mom.
Starting at 10:30 this morning, Lori Vallow Daybell is set to provide opening statements inside the Maricopa County Courthouse here because she decided to represent herself throughout her own trial. Prosecutors in Maricopa County allege that Vallow Daybell set up her former husband Charles to be killed by her brother Alex Cox, who shot and killed him at their home in Chandler back in July of 2019. In August of 2021, they charged Vallow Daybell with conspiracy to commit murder. And so that is what she is on trial for this morning. In an Arizona's Family exclusive one-on-one interview with Vallow Daybell, we asked her why she decided to represent herself in this trial. And this was her response.
There's lots of reasons. Obviously, being pro per is not an easy job. I'm not an attorney. I do not have training to be an attorney. So I talked to my attorneys. I said, I understand where you're coming from. I understand 100%. I don't want to put you in the position where you're saying, I can't do a good job for you. I can't do this for you in this amount of time. But I've been working on my case for 5 years. So I know my case better than an attorney can learn it in 2 years.
This trial comes after being convicted and sentenced to life in prison for the deaths of her 2 children, JJ and Tylee, in Idaho back in 2023. Again, opening statements are set to start at 10:30 this morning, and Arizona's family is going to be providing you live coverage as well as updates throughout her trial on air and online. But Scott Tess, if you want to watch the exclusive one-on-one interview with Lori Vallow Daybell, you can only watch that on arizonasfamily.com.
Elena, thank you so much. And you can follow along with those opening statements at the Lori Vallow Daybell.
Yeah, I think we got it here. Let me ask you, Kendall, because a lot of times when you hear people talk about, I don't know, people like Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, or Jodi Arias, or any Ted Bundy, these are all former Mormons, or Tim Ballard, or you name it. A lot of people just say, hey, look, every religion has some people that take the religion too far, and they're just a couple of bad apples. Is Lori Vallow how much is Mormonism to blame for the horror that is Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell?
You know, I have to say, it has to be a contributing factor. This is actually kind of a personal issue for me. I had a family member who hired Jodi Hildebrandt as their therapist, said that I was possessed of a devil, and started creating drama in my family because of that. And it really does. When your beliefs are such, it affects your actions. Like I just see a direct connection, and especially in the book Visions of Glory, that take near-death experiences and spiritual things to make it seem like I have special authority, special insight, I'm better than others. I see a direct connection to these acts.
Yeah, let's cover what the church had to say about this, by the way. Again, from KSL, which is the church-owned media here. And just real quick, as Latter Daily Digest said, Megan Connor doing great work in Arizona. She really is. Her channel is absolutely exploding. She's doing a great job there. If you want to follow a channel, I would definitely recommend that you do it. Or you follow her. Songs of Our Own. Until they condemn demonic possession, they are 100% to blame. Demonic possession is part of Mormon doctrine, and that is where she got at least some of her ideas. Now, former friends testify on Lori Vallow Daybell's view on religion here. That we've had 5 days of this trial, so I'm just playing you 2 clips from the opening day and also from day number 4. Let's see how the church talks about Lori Vallow.
Explosive revelations in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell. Friends and family members testifying on Lori's concerning behavior, her affair, and religious beliefs leading up to the shooting of Charles Vallow. News specialist Garna Mejia is following the trial for us tonight. Garna, so much to unpack here, right?
I mean, Mike, it was a busy day, but Lori Vallow Daybell's brother, let's start there, Adam Cox, he testified about her strange religious beliefs, alleging that he knew that his siblings, Lori and Alex Cox, were behind Charles's death. Then an old friend of Lori's took the stand. Her name is Serena Sharp. Serena said she met Lori on a trip to Arizona for preparing a people conference for those who believe in the end of days. Serena testified that Lori said she didn't need to repent and talked about people becoming zombies. These statements concerned Serena because they were outside the teachings of their faith. Now, Serena said she and a group of women also participated in a, quote, casting out of an evil spirit for Charles Vallow a few months before his death.
Her asking you to cast out as to her husband.
Yes, it stood out to me. She spoke about her husband being possessed by an evil spirit, and she named the evil spirit.
Do you recall what the name was?
Yes.
What was it?
It was Ned.
Well, Lori, as we know, is representing herself. Her questioning of Serena was combative and defiant. Here is their exchange on zombies. It prompted the judge and prosecution to intervene.
Is it possible that someone else said the word zombie and not me at that meeting when we were all there with the girls? It's possible, but I don't think it was. I think.
Okay, then
it was
what
real.
did I say exactly about zombies? I want to know the sentence I said to you about zombies.
Hold on.
Again,
Ask questions, okay?
After Charles's death, Serena saw Lori and described her as being stoic and not mourning or crying. Now, today also on the stand, we saw Kay Woodcock. She is Charles Vallow's sister, and she testified that Lori didn't allow 7-year-old JJ Vallow to attend Charles's funeral. Now, Lori's demeanor in questioning Kate was very different from Serena's questioning. Lori was almost timid and brief with her cross-examination. You can watch that interaction on our website. Now, this trial will resume on Monday. There is no activity tomorrow. I'll send it back.
Okay, wait a minute here. Let me get this straight. There's an evil demon named Ned. Can we not get a better demon name than Ned? Come on.
Yeah, at least have it be like Xantu or something esoteric. But Ned, I mean, he's the assistant on Spider-Man. Everyone likes Ned.
Yeah, and see, this entire trial is a total crap show from beginning to the end because she is representing herself. As we saw in that little clip, all the time the judge is having to stop things, having to explain things, having sidebars. This is a complete and utter debacle here. I mean, why is she trying to represent herself in this case here? And by the way, there's a long history of Mormons trying to represent themselves. Take Ted Bundy, for instance. I mean, what's the deal with that?
I mean, I don't know their situation, but I do know that when you are raised in the one true church that has light and knowledge that everyone doesn't have, it does give you a sense of superiority and elitism.
Yeah, I can, as I've seen from the comment section in my YouTube channel, I think that still wears off on me today. Folks out there, if you can leave us a 5-star review, you can hit the thumbs up. If you can subscribe, turn on notifications, we'd be grateful for that. We only have 2 last articles to take us out of here. This is the first that I've seen of this one here. This is from the Church News here, Kendall. Look at this. First older single male missionary called here. The pioneering journey of the first Mormon missionary who's single after the church allows senior single males to serve. Kendall, is this a good idea to let single men become Mormon missionaries?
I mean, I have mixed feelings, but I do happen to know several people who are just very tied up in the church. They haven't got married, so they're just kind of being miserable, waiting for that day to happen. They think that's the covenant path, and it hasn't happened to them. So he really is looking forward to serving a mission because at least he gets to do something where he feels like he's contributing. So I think that is a positive thing. If people want to do that and that's what they feel gives their life meaning, then they can choose to do that.
I will take small issue with you. What I would generally say is that less proselytizing missionaries is better. So I like the old policy, which would have restricted it, but more service missionaries is better. And I don't think that he's serving a service missionaries. I'm all for the service missionaries. The church should, in my opinion, convert its entire missionary force to service missionaries. So I guess I'm generally not in favor of it, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree. No big deal. Now, our last article.
Well, I only say that because I take it from their point of view. So, like, from their point of view, this makes sense. If I were controlling the church, I would absolutely do it very differently. I would agree with you.
Okay. Well, it's okay to disagree. No big deal. Even if we don't have to agree, it's not a problem. The last article here, and this is what we're seeing here. Look at this. Robert Wright set to transfer to BYU for $3.5 million. See, in NCAA sports now, you can pay the athletes because of that new rule. I'm not an expert on the subject here, but now these BYU athletes are raking in the big dollars. And see, this is bringing in the donations here. And this is where BYU might become the ultimate juggernaut because the church's pockets are oh so deep, Kendall. Look at this. Now that college athletes can be openly paid, I think it's possible the success of BYU sports could demand a more public accountability for how the church manages its finances. When players are getting multi-million-dollar payouts to transfer to BYU, it's going to upset some powerful people and raise suspicions as to where this money is coming from. See, this is astonishing to me because the church has so much money. It could just buy a sports program. I mean, the church is currently worth what $315 billion, $3 million for an athlete. That is chump change. The church could grow a heck of a sports program if they're willing to shell out the big dough. And you know what? I have a feeling that they will.
Yeah, less regulation, less oversight, more ability to have money influence results. This is a huge development for the potential if they choose to spend their money there. I could definitely see the advantages of them doing that.
See, and I do wonder who is fitting the bill for these athletes here. This particular athlete is going to get $3.5 million. Where's that coming from? Is that your tithing dollars at work? Because I don't think people are on board with paying tithing so that it can go to BYU sporting athletes? Maybe they are. I don't know. I know I wouldn't be. And is this coming from wealthy donors? Where is this money coming from? That's why this particular article says, I think this could lead to more transparency because, tithing is supposed to be an offering unto the Lord, not some athlete who's going to be dunking, scoring a touchdown or dunking a basketball. I don't know. Any last thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I've talked to tons of members, and the mental gymnastics is very easy. If it makes a better perception of the church, then it's money well spent, they might say.
Yeah, I think you could be right about that. Now, Maven here made an episode here. I've got my particular moniker here, which is Maven's Muse. You can see that under my moniker. She sent a thunderbolt across the ex-Mormon sphere here, talking about women's rights, talking about women's access to abortion, talking about her departure from Mormonism Live. Did you watch her reaction, and what are your thoughts about the entire Maven saga?
Yeah, I've talked to Maven extensively about this, and I've got to say, I grew up in the church. I was very conservative. The whole perception of the abortion issue was very one-sided, and the way she phrased a lot of the things, like the principal question you need to ask is, are women objects, or are they, self-actualized people, and should they be in control of their own decisions or not? And once you frame it that way, it really does change the whole dynamic, because whenever you are opining on what their decision should be, it really does put them in a place where, I can make all the decisions relevant to me, but you have to have certain conditions that have to meet my or some external authorities' satisfaction in order to make decisions. It really does change my whole perception of the issue and how much power we are taking away from women on this issue. It's a very important issue.
It's very interesting to me to see the people in the comment section of the posts that go along with this, and it almost seems to be divided, a lot of division along the line of men and women, and then it also seems to be divided with the pro-choice and pro-life camp. If you're pro-life, then you don't agree with what Maven is doing. If you're pro-choice, then you are. So I'm going to be releasing a video soon about my entire thoughts about this entire particular case. It is very controversial out there. It's turned a lot of heads, and I know that Maven is in the chat right now. So we appreciate you, Maven, and we will be interested to see what the developments are from this particular case. That does take us to our final segment here, Kendell, which is the Mormon News Roundup Joke of the Week, and I believe that you have that for us.
I do, yes, but I did want to, if I may, highlight one more Mormon story that was a positive. I still have all my friends and extended family are in the church, and I want to go out of my way to highlight the good things that they do. Can we spend a minute on Tamara W. Runia's talk from conference?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this is a quote from this talk. She says, quote, "It saddens me to admit this, but I used to measure my relationship with the Savior by how perfectly I was living. I thought an obedient life meant I would never need to repent. And when I made mistakes, which was every single day, I distanced myself from God thinking, oh, he must be so disappointed in me. That is not true. I testify that while God cares about mistakes, he cares more about what happens after we make a mistake." And I just thought that was an extremely positive message. Now, I do take issue, especially because those first sentences of her quote that I said there is endemic of the Mormon experience, of how much pressure, how much scrupulosity, how much, self-shame we put on ourselves. But at least they are saying, hey, look, you don't need to fixate on these mistakes. God is more graceful than you might think. And she goes on later in the talk to say, we are not defined by our mistakes. I thought that was bar none the best talk from conference, and I was very appreciative of it.
Yeah, I saw that actually in the Salt Lake Tribune. I just pulled this up while you were talking here. Gordon Monson also highlighted this talk as a standout from the General Conference. And I'm in agreement with what Gordon Monson said surprisingly often. I do like his particular takes on Mormonism. He said why this talk in General Conference stands out in all the right way. This young women's leader's refreshing words gives hope and healing more than hurting. I'm glad that you found something good from General Conference. We definitely don't want to just highlight all the flaws of Mormonism, but there can be definitely some good takeaways, although they can be hard to find sometimes in an ocean of General Conference talks, which are some of which can be quite harmful. We'll just put it that way. Now, that does bring us to our Mormon News Roundup Joke of the Week. I do believe that you have that for us.
Yes. So I need your participation in this joke. So Dives, ask me why I left the church.
Okay. Why, Kendall, did you leave the church?
Because I was offended and wanted to sin. What a joke.
Okay. That's a good one. You have 2 jokes for us, right?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
How many Mormons does it take to change a light bulb?
Yeah, I have heard a couple of answers to this, but I'm not sure.
5. One to change it, and 4 to say nothing ever changed.
I have heard that one. That's very nice. Now, Kendall, what projects are you working on? How can people get in touch with you? What do you need to plug here for yourself?
Yeah, so this is my website, Learned Empowerment. I have a YouTube channel that's also Learned Empowerment, where I go over, because the beliefs of Mormonism don't work, where I just catalog all the best ideas, concepts, philosophies, teachings, and principles from hundreds of books I've read. I read 50 books a year. I have 70,000 notes in my Evernote of just the best golden nuggets of wisdom. And on my Learned Empowerment YouTube channel, I just teach those in what I hope is engaging ways that can replace, these beliefs that are based on nothing but superstition and supernatural things that you can't prove. I've also written a book. It's called Life Simplified. It's a collection of life hacks that I've collected over my life. It's really good. I put a ton of work into it. So yeah, buy my book, follow me on YouTube, and my website, Learned Empowerment, I'm also starting to do more with, but my YouTube channel is the most active right now.
Yeah, Life Simplified bestseller, extraordinary handy life hacks for ordinary people. Very interesting stuff here. Masters of Science in Education. I'm right there with you, my friend. I really do appreciate that. It's been a pleasure having you on the Mormon News Roundup, Kendall. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Super enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you out there, if you could just leave us a 5-star review, if you could hit the thumbs up, if you could turn on notifications, we'd really appreciate that. I forgot to mention, I do have one other thing that I wanted to highlight here real quick before I let everyone go. We have a special edition of the Mormon movie reviews going live tomorrow night. We've got a special guest on board tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have a fantastic show. You're not going to want to miss it. And I'd like to thank my Patreon supporters out there real quick. They really support this program, and I very much appreciate that. I'd like to thank Bob. Thanks so much for supporting the Mormon News Roundup. Also, Royce, RMW, Carol, David, Blaine, Brent, Colette, Michael, and a special thanks to Sophronia out there. Thanks so much. And our YouTube groupies, we have 5 of those: Emmerich, Starla, Jeffrey, Garrick, Lee. Thanks so much for joining the Mormon News Roundup and supporting this channel. Kendall, it's been a pleasure ruminating on the great and spacious beehive. Always remember to think celestial, and remember.
No unhallowed hand can stop the Mormon News Roundup from progressing.